Do you ever find yourself watching TikTok for just 5 minutes, only to realize an hour has flown by? What if I told you it's not your fault, but a scientifically designed psychological trap you're falling into every single time? Today, we uncover the dark side of what short videos are doing to your brain and how your reward system is being manipulated without you even noticing. Direct it if you care about your focus, your mind, your emotional balance. Stay till the end. This might just change how you see your screen forever. And if this resonates with you or someone you know, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Whispers of Psychology for more truth behind the mind. Ladies and gentlemen, our brains are wired for survival, not scrolls. But in today's world, you're not hunting for food. You're hunting for dopamine. That feel-good chemical rush you get when something exciting, funny, shocking, or satisfying appears on your screen. TikTok, YouTube Shorts, Instagram Reels. They know exactly how to feed that hunger. Let's break it down. Dopamine isn't just a pleasure chemical. It's actually the anticipation chemical. It gets released when your brain expects a reward. And when that reward comes fast and frequently, like a funny clip, a trending dance, or a shocking fact, dopamine floods the system. Your brain starts craving more, not necessarily because it enjoyed the last video, but because it expects the next one to be just as rewarding or even better. This is where the trap begins. These platforms are engineered with infinite scroll, a function that removes friction between you and the next dopamine hit. You don't even have time to consciously process the last piece of content before the next one is in your face. It's like a slot machine of emotions. Quick, unpredictable, addictive. Now here's where psychology comes in. Studies show that the unpredictability of reward strengthens a habit. This is known as variable reward scheduling, the same technique used in casinos. Sometimes the content is boring. Sometimes it's amazing, and it's that uncertainty that hooks you. Your brain becomes addicted to the chase. Over time, this changes how your brain functions. It begins to expect short bursts of stimulation to feel satisfied. Your tolerance builds. What excited you yesterday now feels dull. So the platform shows you more extreme content, louder, faster, more emotional, just to get the same dopamine response. This is what scientists call desensitization. The reward system is being hijacked and overstimulated, leaving you needing more for less pleasure. And it doesn't stop there, because while dopamine rises, your brain's ability to regulate it weakens. The prefrontal cortex, the part of your brain responsible for attention, decision-making, and impulse control, starts to lose dominance. It's like your rational brain is being outvoted by your impulsive brain. In plain terms, you start watching even when you don't want to, even when you're tired, even when you know you should stop. That's not entertainment anymore. That's dependency, and it affects more than just screen time. Dopamine overload makes normal activities, like studying, reading, deep conversation, or even sitting in silence, feel dull and unsatisfying, because they don't release dopamine as quickly as short videos do. This makes real life feel boring, and that's a dangerous shift. Young minds are even more vulnerable. Teenagers and children have developing brains that are more sensitive to reward and less capable of self-control, which is why we're seeing a global rise in attention disorders, emotional instability, and even anxiety linked to overuse of short-form content. But here's the scariest part. This system wasn't designed to help you. It was designed to use you. Your attention is the product. The longer you stay, the more ads they can show, the more data they collect, the more behavior they can predict, and all they need to do is keep that dopamine flowing. This isn't just a content problem. It's a psychological warfare on focus. It's no longer about what you watch, but why you can't stop watching. Now, let's be clear, dopamine is not the villain. It's how we're wired. It's what motivates us to chase goals, build habits, and enjoy life. But when artificial systems hijack that wiring, it becomes exploitation. And that's where awareness becomes your first defense. So, next time you catch yourself scrolling without thinking, pause and ask, is this pleasure or programming? Because if your brain's reward system is being manipulated, it's not just your time that's being stolen, it's your mind. The human brain was never meant to switch focus 100 times in 5 minutes. But that's exactly what happens when you're consuming short-form content. These videos are fast, addictive, emotionally stimulating, and most dangerously non-stop. With just a flick of the thumb, you go from comedy to tragedy, from motivation to drama, from food hacks to relationship advice. Your mind doesn't have a chance to breathe. What happens next isn't just distraction. It's neurological adaptation. The brain begins to rewire itself to favor speed over depth, variety over focus. Attention, which used to be a skill, becomes a fleeting resource. Every second becomes a test of stimulation. And anything that doesn't match that speed, your brain labels it as boring. This phenomenon isn't theoretical. Neuroscientists have observed a measurable decline in sustained attention spans over the past decade, especially in younger populations exposed to digital media from an early age. Where once people could engage with longer videos, articles, or conversations, now they struggle to stay engaged for even 30 seconds, unless something extreme or exciting happens. It's called continuous partial attention. You're technically looking, but you're not absorbing. You're listening, but not retaining. The brain becomes overwhelmed by inputs and learns to skim instead of concentrate. The prefrontal cortex, responsible for focus, memory consolidation, and executive control, gets overworked and starts to dull in its efficiency. The result? Mental fatigue, shallow processing, and forgetfulness. This also affects how we learn. When the brain gets used to consuming bite-sized, over-edited, ultra-fast content, traditional learning feels too slow. Reading a book, attending a lecture, or watching a documentary starts to feel like a chore. Even everyday conversations, which require patience, presence, and empathy, begin to feel mentally taxing because they're not delivering the same punchy, rapid-fire satisfaction that social media does. Teachers around the world have reported that students now find it hard to sit through 10-minute lessons without zoning out or checking their phones. And it's not because they're lazy. It's because their brains have been trained to expect high stimulation every few seconds. This isn't laziness. It's conditioning. But it doesn't stop in the classroom. Relationships are also affected. When attention becomes fragmented, it becomes harder to stay present, even with the people we love. You might notice yourself checking your phone mid-conversation, or zoning out when someone is telling you something important. It's not that you don't care. It's that your brain has become accustomed to constant novelty, and real life, with its natural pauses and slow pace, can't compete. This constant stimulation is also linked to heightened anxiety. When your mind is never still, constantly jumping from clip to clip, trend to trend, it doesn't get the downtime it needs to process emotions. Your mental inbox gets full, but you never stop long enough to check the messages. This backlog builds stress. Restlessness grows. And because you use external input to feel normal, silence starts to feel uncomfortable. The quiet becomes threatening instead of healing. The scary part? Most people don't realize it's happening. They believe they just have a short attention span, or that they're just not into reading anymore, without understanding that this is a direct outcome of consuming content that reshapes how the brain filters the world. And here's the catch. The platforms that deliver short videos are constantly learning. Their algorithms monitor your behavior down to the millisecond, how long you linger, what you skip, what you rewatch. Based on that data, they deliver content engineered to capture your attention just a little bit longer. It's not you choosing what to watch. It's your brain responding to data-driven stimulation designed to bypass your conscious control. So when we say our attention span is shrinking, what we really mean is that our brain is evolving, but not in a good way. It's evolving to serve machines, not the other way around. Our neural patterns are being shaped by what the algorithm wants us to see, not what we need to grow, reflect, or heal. But the good news is this. The brain is adaptable. Just as it can be trained to chase constant novelty, it can be retrained to rediscover focus. It starts with awareness, recognizing that attention is a muscle and we've stopped exercising it. Instead of endlessly scrolling, even pausing for a few moments between videos helps the brain slow down. Choosing to engage in deep reading, long-form content, or simply sitting with your thoughts can begin to rebuild what was lost. Attention is one of the most valuable currencies of the 21st century. And like any valuable thing, people will try to steal it. But the more we understand how it's being taken from us, and why, the more power we have to take it back. There was a time when we used to search for content. Now, content finds us, and it's scarily accurate. You open your phone for just a few minutes, and suddenly you're deep into videos that speak directly to your thoughts, moods, and emotions. What started as entertainment becomes an invisible chain, pulling you back over and over again. This isn't by chance, it's by design. Digital addiction is not just a buzzword. It is a scientifically recognized behavioral dependency that mimics many characteristics of traditional addiction. Just like gambling or nicotine, the repeated use of social media platforms, especially short-form video apps, triggers reward circuits in the brain. But what makes this form of addiction unique is that it's powered by artificial intelligence that learns about you every single second you're online. Every swipe, pause, like, and scroll tells the algorithm something about you. It records how long you linger on a sad video, whether you replay a funny one, or if you skip content that feels too slow. Based on this data, the platform begins shaping your feed, not based on what you consciously ask for, but what your unconscious behavior reveals. Over time, the system becomes eerily accurate, predicting your emotional state, your preferences, your impulses, sometimes even better than you know yourself. This hyper-personalization is the heart of digital addiction, because when your brain receives content that feels made for you, the dopamine reward becomes even stronger. It feels relevant, engaging, addictive. You don't want to stop, not because the content is objectively good, but because it feels like it was meant for you. That's the trap. What makes it worse is the illusion of choice. You feel like you're choosing to keep watching, but you're not choosing freely. You're reacting to a system that's been sculpted around your most vulnerable psychological patterns. And unlike substances that exist outside of you, this form of addiction lives within the device you carry all day long. It's socially accepted, even encouraged. No one raises an eyebrow when you say you were on TikTok for 2 hours straight. In fact, they probably relate. But behind that casual normalization is a deeper psychological cost. The need to constantly return to the platform starts to interfere with everyday life. You might notice yourself opening the app reflexively during meals, in bed, while working, even when you're feeling emotionally low. It becomes your coping mechanism, your escape. But it never actually satisfies. Because the satisfaction isn't the goal, retention is. Retention is what platforms are built on. Every second you spend on the app adds to their value. And to retain you, they use every psychological tool in the book. Endless scroll, autoplay, variable rewards, sound triggers, facial recognition, even emotional inference. The algorithm is watching, not like a person, but like a mirror that reflects your most addictive tendencies back at you, faster, stronger, and more seductive each time. And just like other forms of addiction, withdrawal kicks in when you're without it. People report feeling restless, irritable, bored, or emotionally numb when they can't access their feed. Silence becomes uncomfortable. Doing nothing feels like a waste. Even moments of peace, which are essential for creativity and emotional clarity, start to feel meaningless. Over time, the consequences begin to show, not just in time lost, but in the way you think. You may find it harder to delay gratification, to focus on a single task, or to sit with uncomfortable emotions. Because every time discomfort arises, you've trained your brain to reach for a screen instead of sitting with the feeling. That coping shortcut rewires your emotional resilience. It also affects self-image. When algorithms feed you content that's filtered, exaggerated, curated, and often unrealistic, it slowly warps your perception of normal. You may begin to compare your life to people you've never met. You might feel like your own experiences aren't exciting enough, fast enough, good enough. But remember, the content you see is a reality. It's algorithmic illusion. So where does that leave us? In a loop where your attention feeds the algorithm feeds your impulses, and your impulses reinforce behavior. The more you watch, the more you're watched, and the better the system gets at keeping you locked in. But understanding the system is the first step in breaking free from it. Addiction thrives in secrecy. Once you see the pattern, once you realize the feed isn't just for fun, but a behavioral feedback loop, you start to gain control. You begin to notice how often you reach for your phone without thinking, how the platform pulls you back in with the perfect video at the perfect time, and most importantly, how much power you've unconsciously given away. Reclaiming your attention doesn't require quitting entirely. It requires awareness. It requires setting intentional boundaries. Even simple acts like turning off autoplay, limiting app time, or taking intentional dopamine detox days can reintroduce the space your brain needs to reset. Because while the algorithm may know your patterns, it doesn't control your choices unless you let it. And once you reclaim your ability to choose, the cycle starts to break. There's a silent exhaustion creeping into modern minds, and most people don't even realize it's there. It's not caused by long work hours or physical strain. It's caused by the constant flood of digital noise we willingly immerse ourselves in, especially through short-form videos. The same content we often turn to for a break or distraction is now one of the biggest contributors to mental fatigue and emotional burnout. At first glance, watching short videos seems harmless. You laugh, you learn something quick, you scroll past what doesn't interest you. It feels light, effortless. But beneath that casual experience, your brain is working overtime. Every few seconds, it's processing new visuals, sounds, emotions, and decisions. Should I like this? Should I skip? What comes next? Without even realizing it, your mind is rapidly switching contexts, again and again, dozens of times per minute. This kind of repeated cognitive shifting drains your mental resources. It creates what's known in psychology as micro-decisions, the tiny, constant choices your brain makes to filter and react to information. When these decisions are made in such rapid succession, it tires out the brain's executive functions. And unlike physical fatigue, this mental tiredness doesn't always feel heavy or painful. It often feels like restlessness, irritability, or apathy. You don't notice you're exhausted. You just start to feel less motivated, more distracted, and strangely disconnected. Another overlooked effect of this rapid consumption is emotional burnout. In a single 10-minute scroll session, you might see a dog reunion, a political rant, a mental health tip, a breakup story, and a comedy sketch, all mixed in random order. The human brain wasn't designed to process such an emotional roller coaster without pause. Each piece of content tugs on different emotional threads, happiness, anger, empathy, shock, excitement, and forces you to jump from one emotional state to another in seconds. Eventually, this creates a phenomenon called emotional blunting. The brain, in an attempt to protect itself from overstimulation, starts to numb the intensity of its emotional responses. You begin to feel less, not because you've grown cold, but because your emotional system is overloaded. Joy doesn't hit as deeply. Sadness feels muted. Even meaningful events in your own life begin to feel dull. That's the cost of emotional burnout. You become desensitized. What's even more concerning is that many people use short-form content as a way to escape their real emotions. Feeling anxious? Watch something funny. Feeling bored? Open TikTok. Feeling lonely? Scroll until something distracts you. And while it may work temporarily, it doesn't resolve the underlying feeling. It buries it. Over time, this avoidance creates emotional backlog. Unprocessed feelings pile up in the background, contributing to chronic stress and inner unease. Mental fatigue and emotional burnout also affect your creativity. The brain needs silence and stillness to think deeply, to imagine, to problem solve. But when it's constantly bombarded with quick content, it doesn't get the space to wander, to get bored, or to explore thoughts without interruption. You begin to lose that spark, the ability to generate original ideas, to reflect meaningfully, or to simply be alone with your own thoughts. Ironically, the very tool we turn to for quick relief is making it harder for us to rest. It interrupts the brain's natural rhythm, particularly the default mode network, a system active during rest, reflection, and daydreaming. This network is critical for memory consolidation, emotional processing, and self-awareness. But it only activates when you're not engaged with something. In other words, if your brain is constantly being fed stimulus, it can't clean itself emotionally or mentally. This endless stimulation also affects sleep. Many people scroll late into the night, thinking it helps them unwind. But the blue light, rapid visual cuts, and emotional swings activate the brain instead of calming it. Your nervous system remains on alert even after you close the app. Sleep becomes shallow, dreams are less vivid, and waking up feels harder. Over time, poor sleep contributes to irritability, poor focus, anxiety, and a weakened immune system, all signs of burnout. What makes this dangerous is that it happens quietly. Mental fatigue doesn't come with a warning sign. Emotional burnout doesn't announce itself. It builds slowly, day by day, scroll by scroll, until one day you realize you're tired. Not just physically, but deeply internally. A kind of tired that rest doesn't fix. A tired that comes from too much noise, too little depth, and no room to feel anything fully. But the good news is our brains are remarkably adaptable. When we begin to slow down, when we create space, set limits, and allow stillness, the brain starts to recover. Emotional sensitivity returns. Thoughts feel clearer. You begin to experience life with more presence, more depth. Even the simple things, a conversation, a walk, a moment of quiet, begin to feel fulfilling again. We don't need to disconnect from the digital world completely, but we do need to use it consciously. We need to stop letting algorithms decide how our minds should feel. Because the more space we give to what's real, what's slow, quiet, and meaningful, the less power this constant scroll holds over us. So here we are, living in an era where content is shorter, faster, louder, and yet somehow it leaves us feeling more restless, distracted, and disconnected than ever before. We've explored how short videos hijack our brain's dopamine system, turning pleasure into a trap. We've seen how our attention spans are shrinking, not by choice, but by design. We've uncovered how algorithms fuel addiction by learning our psychological weaknesses, and how this constant exposure quietly drains our mental and emotional energy, leaving behind a tiredness that doesn't go away with sleep. And yet, the most dangerous part is that we rarely notice it happening, because it all feels normal now. Everyone's scrolling. Everyone's just watching a few videos. But underneath that surface, your brain is changing. Your attention is being sold. And your emotions are being conditioned, not by you, but by systems that were built to profit from your time. But there's hope in awareness. Because the very moment you recognize the patterns, the moment you see how these platforms work on a psychological level, is the moment you take your power back. You are not weak for getting addicted. You are human, and these systems are built to exploit human behavior. So what do you do now? You slow down. You get intentional. You pause between videos. You reclaim your silence. You relearn how to sit with your thoughts instead of running from them. And most importantly, you start protecting the most precious thing you have in the modern age, your attention. Because where your attention goes, your life follows. If this message resonated with you, take a moment, not just to reflect, but to act. Share this with someone who needs to hear it. Take a break from the feed. Start noticing what your brain is truly craving beneath the scroll. And when you're ready, Whispers of Psychology will be here, reminding you that your mind was never meant to be programmed by an algorithm. It was meant to be understood.